The maps they started with were mostly guesses. Beyond the last known coast, cartographers left warnings, "Here be dragons," or simply left the page blank. In 982, a Norse chieftain was exiled from Iceland for the second time in his life, this time for manslaughter. He sailed west into uncharted water and found land. Green land. He named it Greenland, not for the ice sheets that covered most of it, but as a marketing strategy. He brought 500 settlers back. He built a colony. It endured for 5 centuries, long after anyone had forgotten the lie behind the name. His son sailed further. Around the year 1000, Leif Erikson pushed west from Greenland and reached the coast of a continent that would not receive its name for another 5 centuries. He called it Vineland. He built a camp at a place now called L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland, Canada. He spent a winter. He left. The evidence of his presence lay buried in the earth for 1,000 years before anyone went looking for it. He left Venice in 1271, at the age of 17, and did not return for 24 years. The overland journey to China alone took 3.5 years. At the court of Kublai Khan, Marco Polo served as envoy, governor, and imperial diplomat. He saw paper money, coal, and cities of 1 million people, none of which existed in Europe. When he dictated his account in a Genoese prison, every detail was true. Nobody believed him. He left Tangier on a pilgrimage in 1325 and did not return home for 29 years. In that time, Ibn Battuta traveled 75,000 miles, more than any person in recorded history before the age of steam, through 44 modern countries, from Mali to the Maldives, from Persia to the coast of China. His account, the Rihla, described the plague, the Golden Horde, and the Sultan of Mali, with an anthropologist's precision and a poet's hunger for the world. Between 1405 and 1433, the Chinese Admiral Zheng He commanded 7 great voyages across the Indian Ocean, with fleets of up to 300 ships and 27,000 men, a force that dwarfed anything Europe would put to sea for another century. He reached East Africa, Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia. He brought back giraffes, ambassadors, and tribute. Then the emperor died, the voyages were banned, and the records were burned. China turned inward. Europe took the seas. The Portuguese had been pushing south along the African coast for decades. In 1488, Bartolomeu Dias sailed further than any of them and caught a storm that drove his ships around the tip of the continent before he knew what had happened. He named it the Cape of Storms. His king renamed it the Cape of Good Hope. The road to Asia was open. Dias himself drowned rounding the same cape 12 years later on Vasco da Gama's supply run. He was wrong about almost everything. He miscalculated the circumference of the Earth by 25%. He believed the voyage from Spain to Asia would take 3 weeks. He arrived in the Caribbean after 33 days and called the people he found there Indians because he was certain he had reached the Indies. He made 4 voyages. He never admitted the truth. He died in 1506, still insisting he had found Asia. His error is the reason 2 continents exist on every map you have ever seen. In 1497, da Gama sailed from Lisbon with 4 ships, rounded Africa, and arrived in Calicut, India, after 10 months and 27,000 miles at sea. The spices he returned with were worth 60 times the cost of the expedition. He had broken the Ottoman monopoly on the Eastern trade. He did it through a combination of navigation and a ruthlessness so complete that Indian port cities were still burning when his fleet weighed anchor and sailed for home. Columbus called it the Indies. Vespucci called it what it was. After sailing the South American coast in 1499, the Florentine navigator published a pamphlet titled Mundus Novus, the New World, declaring that what Columbus had found was not Asia, but an entirely separate continent, unknown to the ancients and uncounted in every geography ever written. A German cartographer put the name on a map in 1507. Columbus got the discovery. Vespucci got the name America. He set out from Seville in 1519 with 5 ships and 270 men, intent on sailing around the world. He found the strait at the tip of South America that bears his name. Navigating it took 38 days. The Pacific crossing that followed lasted 98 days without landfall. Men ate rats, sawdust, and strips of leather. Magellan was killed in the Philippines in 1521. Mid-voyage, 18 men completed the circumnavigation without him. The Earth was round. The proof had cost everything. De Soto landed in Florida in 1539 with 600 soldiers and spent 3 years marching through the American Southeast, through Georgia, the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Arkansas. In 1541, at the banks of a vast, brown, relentless river, he became the first European to cross the Mississippi. He died of fever at 42. His men sank his body in the river by torchlight to conceal his death from the tribes watching from the far bank. The river kept his secret. In 1534, the Breton navigator Jacques Cartier sailed into the Gulf of St. Lawrence and planted a wooden cross on the shore. He claimed the territory for France and followed the river inland as far as the site of modern Montreal, naming the land Canada from the Iroquois word for village. That claim held. Nearly 5 centuries later, 4 million people in Quebec still speak the language Cartier brought with him. A cross planted in 1534 is still standing in its way. Hudson made 4 voyages in search of the Northwest Passage and found, instead, the river, the strait, and the vast inland sea that now carry his name. In 1611, after a brutal Arctic winter, his crew mutinied. They put Hudson, his teenage son, and 7 sick men into a small open boat in the middle of the bay. The ship sailed home. Hudson was never seen again. New York City stands on the river he charted. The bay still holds his name like a grave. He was a farmer's son from Yorkshire who became the greatest navigator in history. In 3 Pacific voyages between 1768 and 1779, James Cook mapped New Zealand, charted the eastern coast of Australia, surveyed the Pacific Island groups, and pushed further south than any ship before him. His charts were so accurate that naval officers were still using them 150 years later. He was killed in Hawaii in 1779 in a dispute over a stolen rowboat. The Pacific remembers him better than the English did. Between 1799 and 1804, the Prussian naturalist Alexander von Humboldt traveled 6,000 miles through Latin America, scaled the active volcano Chimborazo to an altitude of 19,286 feet, then the highest any human had recorded, cataloged 60,000 plant species, and invented the field of ecology. Darwin called him the greatest scientific traveler who ever lived. Simón Bolívar called him the second discoverer of America. Humboldt called it work. He was still publishing scientific papers at the age of 89. In 1804, President Jefferson sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark west with 33 men and instructions to reach the Pacific. They traveled 8,000 miles in 28 months. A Shoshone woman named Sacagawea guided them through the Rocky Mountains when no map existed for what lay ahead. They named 178 plants and 122 animals unknown to science. When Lewis first saw the Pacific, he recorded the moment with one sentence: "Ocean in view. Oh, the joy, the..." The Scottish missionary David Livingstone spent 30 years crossing sub-Saharan Africa on foot, a cumulative distance equivalent to walking around the Earth. In 1855, he became the first European to see Victoria Falls, a curtain of water a mile wide, dropping 350 feet into the gorge below. He named it after his queen. The local people called it Mosi Oatunya, the smoke that thunders. He died in 1873 in a hut in what is now Zambia, still walking towards something no map had named yet. In 1869, the New York Herald sent its journalist Henry Stanley into Central Africa with a single instruction: find Livingstone. 2 years later, in a village on the shore of Lake Tanganyika, he did. He removed his hat, extended his hand, and said the words that became the most famous sentence in exploration history. Dr. Livingstone, I presume. Livingstone replied that he was. Stanley later mapped the entire Congo River, 2,920 miles, and opened Central Africa to the outside world. On December 14, 1911, Roald Amundsen and 4 companions planted the Norwegian flag at the South Pole. The last great geographic prize on Earth, claimed at last. He had beaten his British rival Robert Falcon Scott by 33 days. Scott's party arrived to find the flag already there, read Amundsen's letter, and died on the return march. Amundsen had already navigated the Northwest Passage in 1906. He had solved both great polar problems of his age. Scott had solved neither. In 1914, Shackleton's ship Endurance became trapped in Antarctic pack ice and was crushed over 10 months. He led his 28 men off the sinking ship and onto the ice. When the ice broke up, he sailed 3 lifeboats to Elephant Island. Then, with 5 men, he crossed 800 miles of the Southern Ocean in a 28-foot lifeboat to reach South Georgia Island, in winter, without reliable instruments. He then crossed the island's unmapped mountains on foot to reach help. Every single man survived.